welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday evening. We are really excited to have you, Pogo. I am so pumped to hear what you got to say, learn a little bit about the fishery, and talk about our favorite thing in the whole world, Pike and Muskie. So welcome, brother. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Dan. It's an honor just watching the Musky community on social media. And even though I've been laid back on social media the last 6 months of my life, just kind of take a little mental break. But just seeing what you're doing at Musky Fool and following you and your growth has been awesome. So it's an honor to be here.
Appreciate it, brother. Talk to us a little bit before we get all into it. What have you been up to for the last few months? I love the sound of a social media break.
It's like a cleanse, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was a really busy spring, and then that rolled into summer quickly, and then unfortunately we had monsoon, like a rare. I'm being funny, but a rare monsoon season here in the Northeast where our river was unfishable for almost 2 months. I mean, like rivers in general, and lakes were okay, but midsummer lake fishing is never fun, or early summer. So it was really nice. It's just kind of taking a midsummer mental break, which is kind of what I do every year anyways, because my season starts in March here in Connecticut and New England, and goes until end of June, early July, and then it gets too warm, just like for at least for e-socks. And then I pick up right around this time. Nights are getting cooler, days are getting shorter. So I'm just really ramping up for like kind of the fall run here. I've got I call it my first trip of the fall this weekend. Meaning like that's kind of a kickoff to the season, to the fall season here, even though it's still August. But yeah, so it's been nice.
Hell yeah. Well, I want to get in a little bit, get into kind of understanding what's going on out there in the New England Northeast area. Kind of a fish out of water, as they say, when it comes to what you guys got going on. But it sounds super cool, and we're going to talk a lot about it. Before that, though,
okay.
I want to just run us through. We do it with kind of all the guests. We're talking about muskie and pike fly fishing, which is still, everybody on this call, it's probably what you think most about if you're like Pogo and I. But
Sure.
It's still random. It's still out there. How did you make your way? How did you make your way into pike and muskie fly fishing?
I wish it would sounded sexier, but by accident. Been fishing since I could walk. My dad got me started when I was a little kid, and then when I started I lived in California for a while for work, and I moved back to New England, specifically Connecticut at the time, and got into fly fishing. Like the rest of us usually kind of start with trout. So I did that, and then one of the local knowledgeable fishermen said to me, "Well, if you go way upriver, there's some smallmouth up there." And I was like, "Really?" I'm like, because I grew up wanting to be Bill Dance. Used to sit there and watch ESPN every Sunday morning and hit record on the VHS. So I said, "Let me go give it a shot." Totally like not geared up properly. I was using like 5 weights, 9 foot 5 weights with like flies that you should be throwing on a 5 weight. But anyway, the learning curve was steep for me back then. This was about over 10 years ago now. And had my first pike experience completely by accident. Hairs on my neck stood up, said, "What the F was that?" Ran back to some friends and said, what's a pike? How does this work? And, back then, musky fly fishing page wasn't as dominant. It was, or not dominant, it was as probably, there wasn't a lot of information on YouTube, which is why I have a passion for sharing what I know to help people's learning curve. And then just started going after it, man, and just tried my best, and had the first fall, I couldn't hold a coffee cup because I had tennis elbow so bad. Wrong rod, wrong line, too big of flies, trout setting every other fish. Going, what's wrong with me? And that's why I love this specific sport of e-socks, is because I have a few screws loose, and if you want to do this, you probably have to have a few screws loose, right?
Absolutely.
So anybody's welcome in my boat to give it a shot. If somebody calls me for a trip, or if I go with friends, I'm like, okay, you're cool enough because you want to do this, and this is difficult, but I'm going to help you the best I can. So it just evolved from there. And then I caught a handful of pike, started guiding a little bit for them. And then I'll never forget, I was sitting in this porch, and Brad Bowen, who at the time I thought was a god, he put a post up on Facebook and said, "I have a rear cancellation." So I was like, shit, man. I called him up that night, booked a trip. 2.5 weeks later, I flew out to Wisconsin by myself, rented a car, drove up to God knows where in northern Wisconsin, thinking I was like at the end of the earth.
Baby. Yeah.
Go to his cabin by myself, turn on the heat outside, wake up October 3rd, there's snow on the ground. The first day I caught a world record walleye on the fly. And the second day I got my first muskie on the fly. And it's just ever since then,
Bye-bye.
It was done, like completely done. And I just want to give a shout out. I see some participants here to where's Rick? Is Rick still on? Rick Tinney, he's on. He's I fished with him a bunch out in Wisconsin. I just want to say hi, Rick. We got to catch up. But yeah, so that was just, it just got in my blood, man. It has never left. If I fish, it's for pike or muskie or even bass. And I got into the carp thing for fun on off season. But yeah, I'm screwed. Totally screwed.
It sounds like you had the best experience of it, kind of fishing in your blood the whole time, dabbled.
Yeah.
This is started trout fishing. This is cool, fly rod cool. And then it was just thrown off the deep end.
The deep end.
Wake up and you're in winter Wisconsin with Bowen and you're just like, shit, I'm fucked.
Yeah. He shows up, hair down to his shoulders, beard. Hey kid, you ready to go throw some flies? I'm like,
that's a good one. Oh wow, I'm just learning it. Pogo's got a good Bowen impersonation too.
He's the best, man. Yeah. And that's the thing with the community that you're building, and a lot of people are building these days around the flies that you offer and just the gear, and it's the learning curve is helping, because it's a frustrating sport at first. It's like being on an island by yourself. And I think what it's doing for people, like what you're doing and what other communities are doing in this community, is trying to bring us together and help each other. And it's a battle out there, man.
Yeah. Well, at first I appreciate that. I kind of grimace when you say what we're building our community, because you got you and Bowens and Bill Shears and all the guys that are going to be on this season. You guys laid the groundwork, and I think we're super grateful for that, because I was, in similar shoes 10 years ago, looking around, trying to figure out what the hell this is, and throwing bait casters and trying to figure out what a fly rod is. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But you made me laugh, because there's just these little nuances that I don't think you see anywhere else in the coffee cup thing. When you start musky fishing, if you can't pick up a coffee cup, just stay the path. That's a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage almost, right?
Oh, there's so many rite of passages in this sport, specifically, with musky and stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, have a good physical therapist and probably a good mental therapist too, because you might need both.
Yeah, because I always say you can talk to yourself as long as you don't argue with yourself. So when I was out there, trout setting left and right, and I occasionally I'm going to be completely transparent. I screw up frequently. It's not, you're not going to get every situation, every fish right, but it's just coming back for more. Yep.
Hell yeah. And is that, you kind of touched on it, but I love hearing it from you, because you kind of wear the passion on your sleeve about it. Why was it Pike and Muskie for you? Was it part, you kind of mentioned the challenge, it was still new frontier 10 years ago, but is there something that sticks with you, because you're still doing it? And I think the reason I ask is I kind of have this theory that there's people that either try it once and never come back, or they just try it once and they're just gone forever. Everything else is just blacked out. Just Pike and Muskie, bye-bye.
Yeah.
And you're obviously the latter.
Yeah. I think there's two parts to that, in my mind at least. Is the first part is I just could go back as clear as day when I could still see that first fish that I missed on a fly rod, and it was a pike that was just obnoxious. It was obnoxious. It's like somebody threw a bowling ball in the water on this top water popper. And to sum that up, because I could get long-winded with psychology of this, I just found them to be the most badass fish out there in fresh water, and the challenge and the fact that a 40-inch muskie could be 14, 15 years old, eat that much meat and get, kind of survive out there in the world, so to speak, is amazing. Dan, your screen just froze. You still there? Oh, there, you're back.
Still there.
Okay.
I think you just lost it for a second, but I got you.
Okay.
It's a crazy.
Yeah. So just the fact that what a badass species and I played sports my whole life. I was in corporate sales for 20 years. I like that cat and mouse adrenaline thing. And just to like the plumber of fly fishing, I don't know if that's a good analogy, but, or, the carpenter of fly fishing, it's it's grit, man. And I like grit.
Yep, I hear you. I love it. I love it. I think what you're also tapping into is that kind of like you can be the best angler with the best rod, and I can circle the spot on the lake or the river and point you there, and it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. Whereas, like, when, and I don't want to like dismiss it, but when like caddis are hatching on our local trout rivers, like I could take someone probably that's never touched a fishing pole and be like, just lift it up, put it down, and
Yeah.
oh, there it is, done. It's like,
Yeah.
and
And great place to start. Like
yes,
that's how
yeah,
I started.
yep,
Great place to start. And if that's your thing for your whole life or most of your life, if that's your passion, that's great. I know you and I talked a little bit about the psychology
yeah. Let's
of,
like take it
yeah, like
down
the
that rabbit
psych,
hole.
yeah. I mean, I see a bunch of names on here, so a few that I recognize. And I'm sure a lot of people in here have been doing this a while, and um, you know, I guess the best way, like, well, I'll give you a prime real world example. I spoke to a potential client today, and he asked the $1 million question: how are the pike biting? And I was like, all right, let's start from scratch. You might not catch a fish, you might catch three, and I kind of gave him the psychology of what a pike could eat, a muskie could eat 1/3 their body length. They could eat once a week. We're going to be going over fish. I know where they are this time of year. Just a matter of, is it it's like right time, right day, right place, right? But for anybody who's new in the sport, you'll kind of know in the first couple hours, is this for you, right? Like, or at least something you might want to pursue. Then when you have your first pike or muskie experience, then you'll really know, like, oh shit, I kind of see. So you kind of got to, I would say, give it a window, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 seasons, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like, I got a bag of 40, I got a bag of 50. That's going to happen as long as you put the time in and just kind of work on your skill. But like, just let it unfold. Don't put that pressure on yourself. And then as you kind of go through that like learning curve and the different emotions and perspectives on, throwing a 10, 11, 12 weight with flies this big to this big, and then that experience happens and it all goes down, you'll know that, okay, I'm going to take this to the next level, or, I'm going to dabble with it. I'm going to reach out to people like Musky Fool for flies, or I want to hire a guy like Brad, or, someone or Luke Swanson, or, whomever you might be in your area, or
Or
you want to
Pogo.
seek out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because and then I think hiring the guide, for me, like being with Brad for 3 seasons as a client before I went out there for a couple of months every fall, like that was priceless. And just that the knowledge that somebody can pass down to you. And obviously with YouTube and social media now, the learning curve has gotten a little bit less steep. But, there's kind of an evolution of your passion for these guys. And as speaking for someone who doesn't know everything and is always learning every year, it's the most humbling sport ever. Like, I had a tough spring. Like, I'll be honest with you, on the water. Like, we just had a lot of rain, even though it wasn't flooded, and the air temperature was going like this, the water temperature was going like this. And, we put our heart and soul out there, and it was a below average spring for my clients, and it sucked. But, we caught fish, and we had those moments. But, it's just like, it's the bigger picture, it's the bigger picture of this, that you just got to give it some time and let it unfold, and don't put a lot of pressure on yourself, and have fucking fun. Have fun, right? Listen, I ain't going to be a millionaire doing this. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be on the cover of, maybe Luke Swanson in Fisher magazine. God bless him. Like, he's crushing it. But like, that's great, but it's just have fun with it. And if it evolves to something career-wise or a full-time passion, that's even better. But I think we lose sight of like not everybody, but I get it in those moments too. Like, even when I'm guiding, like, all right, Pogo, slow down, have fun here.
Yeah.
The guy missed the fish. We'll get another shot today. Don't, like, relax.
Yep.
I got a little long-winded on that.
Often throughout the season, still after doing this, like, you got to pinch yourself, like, don't take it too seriously. And you kind of, I don't know, I don't know about you, but when I get in my zen around muskie and pike fishing, it's when I kind of just give up. I kind of just, I just give into it, and it's going to happen when it happens, and I'll be ready or I won't be ready. I'll fuck up or I won't fuck up. And it's just, it's almost, I don't need to get into like spiritual shit, but it's almost kind of predetermined. It's just like, it's gonna happen one way or another, that fish is gonna eat.
Dude, I've spent mornings meditating before trips. I'm into meditation, right? Like kind of like centering myself and visualizing, and then you just got to go out there and have fun, because what it is what it's going to be. It's like when you play golf. I'm not a big golfer. I used to play years ago, but you go to the driving range to hone your skills, and you go on the course to have fun, right? So, it's the same thing with fishing. Do all your homework at home, tie your flies, do this, practice your fly casting, go out and have some fucking fun.
Yep. You think about it, it's August, your time flies for fall, you're visualizing the colors changing, but then you show up at the boat landing, just get in the boat. Yeah. There is a good golf analogy there, because it's like, I've done it. I've seen people do it. You can be in the front of that boat casting. And it's kind of like being on the course, having too many swing thoughts.
Yeah.
Having too many. Should I do this? Should I be? And it's just like, it's just. There's just too much shit that happens. Like, you get the most perfect caster with the most perfect figure eight, who knows the river like anybody else. I could take a newbie out. They could put it in the tree. It could fall off the tree, pile up with slack, and a 50 hits it. Like, it's just how it rolls.
I was out in Wisconsin, like, you're exactly right, Dan. I was out, it's probably about 4 years ago now. Kyle Sorensen. I don't know if you know Kyle.
I know of him, but I've never met him.
Yeah. Great guys. We fished a lot together, and I was out there. I just drove my stealth craft, my truck, 2 days, 2.5 days, delirious, just who cares? I don't need to sleep. Let's go fishing. And it was like an hour into it, and Kyle was in the back of the boat, and I was in the front of the boat, and he's like, Pogo. I'm like, what, man? He's like, you're thinking way too hard, dude. Like, you're like, I could tell you're like, you want to get that first fish under your belt. And then he's like, these are the two things you got to think about. And I can't say them on here, but he said, think about these two things while we're fishing. And sure enough, like a half hour later, it happened. And I'm like, thank you, Kyle.
Pogo, I can edit this, remember? So before it hits
one begins with a T and one begins with a B.
We'll let everybody else guess. I love it.
Use your imagination. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. And it's kind of the beauty of it. Like, and again, I like all types of fly fishing, but like when I go trout fishing, I go for something else. I typically trout fish by myself. Yeah. I hate musky fishing by myself.
Yeah.
But I want to be alone when I'm trout fishing. Yeah. And, bass is just like, it's like summer beers. It's just a whole different thing. But there is a little bit of a, and I have to be careful with it. And you're kind of encouraging the rest of us to be careful with it too. Like, you build yourself, like fall. We're coming up on fall. And it's like, the world championship, the playoffs are here, get ready. And it's like, kind of, but just, we're fucking fishing. We're out, like, you and I both, and I want to hear you talk about this. We both came from corporate jobs, corporate world. Look back on ourselves 10, 12 years ago and imagine, like, we get to talk about fishing for Pike and Muskie.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah, it's that fall. The fall for me is just like that crisp morning air, going out in my backyard to my barn, getting my boat ready, and like the fog and the crisp air and the leaves are changing. And it just feels fishy, man. Like, I just like, it's, to me, it's just, it's like a pinnacle.
Yeah.
But having fun in the meantime, I'm just saying, it just boils my blood. Like, and that's the thing about like where you guys are in the Midwest, between, Wisconsin and Illinois, and even the guys out in Ohio and even the Southern Muskie, I was down there with Dave Huff a couple of times in Kentucky and had good success. Yeah. And like, it just makes your blood boil, man. It's just like, if after a couple seasons of the fall chasing these socks, if your hair is not standing up, which I don't have much left, but your hair is not standing up, like, in the morning, like with that rod ready to go, and your boat and your buddies and the coffee and a cigarette and whatever you have, it's the playoffs.
Yep. No, you're spot on. It's what's, it's all ahead of us right now. It's all ahead of us. In December, we'll be whining and complaining and bitching and moaning. But right now,
I'll be stalking all of you guys on social media. Rolling, going, look at that muskie. Look at that muskie. You fucker, look at that muskie.
Yeah. I do also love, we joke about this, Jen and I do, and a couple of my buddies, just like the day in the emotional day of a muskie angler when you wake up and you're like, ooh, this is like a 4-fish day today, and then like 8 hours later, you're just like, you're just like, what the fuck happened today?
Well, we should start a little like a coffee table book of like things that we say, like, it's like you're putting the boat in the water. Oh, it's a fishy day, you know,
Ooh,
and
sucker. I just saw a sucker. This can be good.
yeah, 8 hours later, you're looking for that one fish. But do you want to talk about anything technical?
Yeah, let's get into that. We've just been waxing on about how much
Yeah,
we love it, but
yeah.
I guess you're familiar with both of them, so I'd love to hear you kind of talk about what the Pike Muskie fishery looks like out in the Northeast,
Okay.
where you see it kind of going, and maybe how it compares to other areas you fished, whether it's the down south
Yeah.
or up in the Midwest here.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So here in Northeast, it's a little bit of everything. Unfortunately, depending on where you're located in the Northeast, I call it the Northeast, you know, like New England, from
Yep.
Connecticut up to Maine,
Yep.
Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and upstate New York, even though that's not New England, you know, just the Northeast. So, you know, all throughout Connecticut, Massachusetts, there's a few rivers with like good classic, beautiful rivers that I guide on for northern pike and smallmouth. There is a part of this river system, the Housatonic River system. There is a lake that they stocked tigers in like 5 years ago. So, you know, that's kind of cool. You know, it's an option. Obviously, clients love it. I got a tiger. That's pretty cool. So, and it's 90% of the waters here, they're all wild fish. So, you know, it's a beautiful scenery. I mean, it's for New England up here where I live and guide mostly is pretty remote. You know, you might see one house or two houses on the sections that we fish. And it's pretty wild. It's beautiful. It's literally gorgeous. I mean, there's people that this whole area is like littered with second home people because it's just, you know, there's this remote type of thing. So, and then for muskie, you know, you got to go to upstate New York, eastern, like as far as within a drive here from Connecticut, you know, you have to go upstate New York, which you have the Susquehanna River, you have the St. Lawrence, which is like 6 hours north of me. You have Lake Champlain. There's a couple of tributaries there that have some wild muskies or muskies in them. So it's a little bit more of a drive for muskies, but we do it all the time. You know, the closest muskie spot for me is about three and a half hours, which I've done plenty of. Wake up at 5 in the morning, get back at 10 o'clock at night, or do some sleepovers. But there's a couple sections of the river there that I've done very well and learned over the years. But yeah, so it's and there's a lot of beautiful people that are into trout. There's some amazing trout streams around here. Plenty of, you know, hiking and fishing and kayaking and, you know, all
I mean, from a guide perspective and just a lifestyle perspective, like how far are you, you know, you're how far from a couple of like the most populated area in the country, right? Whether it's Boston, New York, like
I'm sandwiched in between Boston.
Yeah, that person coming out to the, you know, flyover country as they call it. Like you just take a little, you can probably get up there in a day. It's good.
I have a lot of people from New York City and Boston that are regulars that,
And then not to mention, you know, maybe you doesn't have the amount of fishing possibilities for muskie. It's got an amazing pike fishery, but like the St. Lawrence, don't sleep on that. I mean, you know,
I've been up there.
I studied this shit because I'm a nerd, and like the whole Detloff, you know, Louis Spray versus the Chippewa Village versus the St. Lawrence, you know.
If I was at 6 hours, I'd be there once a week.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend that lives up there, and he has caught plenty of 50 plus inches, plenty.
Yep. No, it's a beautiful. I got to get up there. I've driven around that area for work, unfortunately, but not for fun times. That's awesome. And we have a lot of this too because we don't stock pike. And generally speaking, not a huge fan of stocked fish, but mostly sounds wild then. I mean, the Smalley and Pike wild rivers, like that's wild, natural, not been stocked, but it's in pretty good shape. I mean, as far as you're seeing.
Yeah, very good shape. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep, very good shape.
Awesome.
Yep, everything's going in the right direction. You know, fishing pressure never helps any fishery, right? It's not, you know, that's what I really love about like where you guys are in Wisconsin. I mean, you have a dozen rivers, tributaries, lakes. Here it's a little bit more consolidated. But other than that, you know, with catch and release, you know, obviously becoming huge over the last 10 years, and I'm sure it was big before that, but just promoting that catch and release and like, you know, on my YouTube channel, I have a how to handle pike and muskie video. I mean, it's not the best, but it kind of gets you started in the right direction. You know, because I'm a big advocate, obviously, of teaching people about the species, about the history. and then most importantly, how to handle them correctly. That became a big passion of mine. So yeah, so we're all trying to do our best to kind of pay it forward and make sure that these species stay intact.
Yeah, and again, most people on the call and most people who end up watching this on YouTube, you've probably already seen Pogo, but if you haven't, his YouTube channel is awesome. I've watched that video many times. I've sent it to many people.
Oh, thank you.
And there's also like, it's tough because everybody, we get a lot of new people, and I'm sure you do in your boat. They're so excited. They got their rod, they got their line, they got their flies, and then you kind of have to have the talk about like, so you need a net and some pliers and some hook cutters, and it's not really optional. Like, if you want to, you got to kind of do it because you're going to hook a fish that doesn't want to be hooked and is a lot meaner and bigger and more pissed off. And, we see it every year, right? Someone's just at the dock throwing a bobber and worm for bluegill, and they catch a 40-inch muskie, and it's like, it sucks, but what are they going to do? But yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if you've paid attention. I've got some like, some little birds, as they call them, that are part of this like warm water study for pike and muskie esox. I think it's mainly muskie focused, but it obviously applies. And a lot of, don't quote me on the science, but a lot of the sneaky little talk is like warm water, we're not so sure about right now. Fish handling is like the #1 determination of like whether or not these fish will make it or not. And it's just good to keep doing it. I saw Doug Wagner did something that was cool where he like gave away a free trip, but the only way you got entered in is if you went and watched his video on handling muskie and pike. And
that's awesome.
You got to get, we're not trying to be preachy. I'm the last person to get that vibe from you that want to be preachy and tell people all this shit, but we hate to do it. We've all learned from mistakes, right? We've all learned screwed it up. So
no, it's so true. It's like, I always say to people, even I see people on the river or lake and like, oh, what are you fishing for a pike? And they got a small bass net. And I asked them, do you know how to handle these fish? And I said, I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but if somebody showed me, if you want to know, I could share a few tips with you. Definitely the right net, definitely a good pair of needle nose pliers, hook cutter or wire cutters if you can have them, and just knowing how, maybe even learning the gill grab a little bit, and if you're not really comfortable, we all want that money shot, the photo, but even if you're not comfortable, just keep that fish in the net next to the boat. I always say to clients, like they hook a fish, we get it in the net, and we high five, and I'm like, okay, do me a favor, let's put that rod over here. And I get like a little directional. I'm like, I'm gonna be a little directional right now, if that's okay. And I'm like, because when we pick this fish up, all shit's gonna break loose if that thing starts squirming in your hands. So get everything organized, let the fish rest. The big nets that the stowaway, or they're called, fold open. I mean, it's like, I call it the playpen. They got their toy in their mouth, and they're in the playpen, and then get them all settled, get the camera ready, get everything set up. So it's like literally grip, shot, back in the water, if you can. And catch it real, just handling esox. I mean, you want to see something funny? So I'm going to show you guys some. Can I do a photo show and tell here?
Do it. Go for
it. So this is Kate and I, my fiance. This is like our workspace. We have a couple monitors and computers. So this was under my computer. It must have been there all fall or all year. And I didn't pick these out like for tonight. They were all just sitting here. But you can see my hand.
Yep.
What's that on top of my hand?
A little bloody there.
A little bloody there, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought I knew what I was doing. And that was my first 50-incher right there, right? But I still can't feel the tip of my thumb. So what happened was I was with a buddy out in Wisconsin and stoked, right? Got everything ready, had the bumper board, I wet the bumper board, put it in the back of the Stealth Craft, got the fish on the board, had the hook in his mouth, and it was just on the corner. And I said, my buddy Dan, his name was Dan as well. I said, dude, I'm just going to grab the hook and just pop it out. He's like, dude, here's the pliers. I'm like, no, it's just in the corner of his mouth. I mean, it's a big fish, head like the size of a gator. So I grabbed the fly and just to go like this. And the effort just did a head shake, just like a baby little like jab, caught his fang And I mean, literally, it did not stop bleeding. We had like duct tape on it. I'm sure I needed stitches, but when it gets cold out, I still can't feel that.
Yeah.
And I had the pliers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we did everything else right. So having that is mucho importante.
Yeah, dude, it's so true. And this is not for folks that fish with gear. I still throw gear rods. I'm no purist, but part of the reason, other than the fun of fly fishing, that I've had too many bad moments with 6 treble hooks. Like I had 2 hooks in there, and you can pop it.
Yeah, I don't know how you gear guys are. I know you fish with you both, but like gear is like, to me, I guided out when I got out.
You need a nurse with me on the boat.
Well,
oh, go ahead. Yep.
I had some gear guys for a couple of days, and they had big plugs, and man, I'm like, dude, we're debarbing every hook. They're like, really? I'm like, yes, we're debarbing every hook. And I give gear guys a lot of credit, man. There's a lot of hooks flying around in that net. And you got to be careful. I don't want to be in. I think you froze there, Dan, or I froze.
Yeah, I did. Sorry folks for the internet delay. It's part of the game, unfortunately. But I do. And you've probably heard the story, but have you heard of, I don't want to share it here, we'll tell it again, but for folks that know Tommy Shank, ask Tommy Shank about his Pike handcuffs.
I know all about it, yeah.
Yep, it's an epic story. So you'll have to, you can tell him Pogo and I sent you when you ask him.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are cranking along here, brother, and I do want to hit on a couple other things here. So you talked a little bit about Northeast Fishery. When are you coming back to Wisconsin, by the way? When are you got any?
That's up. This year is probably not going to happen, unfortunately. Last year was COVID. That was just it was broke my heart. But so this fall, we've got a lot going on.
Yeah. So
I'm going to gear up for next year. So it's been actually going out there 7 years in a row, and then the last 3 or 4 seasons were for almost 2 months, and so I'm just taking a little mental break from that as well. Just getting some things done here. And so I would say next year for sure.
Good.
Would love to come see you guys out there, and then come out for the fall run.
Hell yeah. Well, the fish will be waiting for you. But I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about this. And I see we kind of have we touched on that one question from Brian, but I got questions earlier from folks on this. And like, from your perspective, fishing for muskie and pike all over the place, talk about the differences between them. I think, there's a lot of like stereotypes, right? Like you and I were joking about this, that like pike have a bad PR agent and muskie are sexier, and they're at the end of the day, like they're both really fun and they're amazing. Yeah. Very similar, but like, actually, what do you see when it comes to similarities and differences, like of targeting them, of catching them, success catching them, etc.?
Sure. No, it's a great question. So I will start out by saying that the whole approach is the same, right? One common theme that I found amongst pike fishermen, both that gear fish for them and fly fish for them, is traditionally they don't figure 8 for pike. They're like, that doesn't work. Like, we don't figure 8 for pike. Well, it works. It works. All right. It's the same fucking thing. So I would say if there's anybody out there fishing for pike or have pike waters, even though it's a pike, I probably get 30% of our pike on figure 8s. I feel that
that's awesome.
I feel that there's more muskie. I've experienced. This is my experience out in Wisconsin, down south, even here in the Northeast for muskies. I find that muskies are more apt to come into the figure 8 than pike. I feel muskies are more apt to follow 2, 3, 4 figure 8s before they either turn off or try to eat your fly. Where pike usually get about 1 or 2 pike that I've gotten on the third figure 8, but not many. The figure 8 much longer, even if I call it blind figure 8, where you might do 1 figure 8 in musky waters, where I always recommend 2 figure 8s at least. I've done where'd you go, Dan?
I'm
Did I
still
lose
here,
you?
Pogo. I just took myself off video because you're the star tonight, and I think it'll help the internet connection. So I'm still here.
Oh,
Sorry about that, but I don't want to interrupt you
oh,
with
okay.
shitty internet.
All right, cool. I'm
Yeah,
imagining your handsome.
yeah, I'm
I'm
here.
imagining,
Yep, I'm
I'm
making
imagining your
funny
handsome face.
faces. Now I'm flicking you off. No, I'm kidding.
All right, all right. So yeah, I think that like Pike definitely figure eight every time. Muskies seem to kind of come into the figure eight more often and hang around the figure eight more often. That's one thing that I've noticed. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Obviously, muskies are sexier. They're bigger. They're just stronger. They're more aggressive. So obviously, if you have those in your backyard, why why would you want to do anything else? But yeah, so there's a lot of similarities. But the figure eight is the biggest thing that I've noticed. And then you have like the different strains of muskies. So like the northern Wisconsin muskies that I've experienced out there, they're sleeker, as Brad would say, more built for hydraulics, snake-like, can get in that fast water and get groovy and just do some gnarly things in fast water and feed in fast water. Where here in the Northeast, it's a different strain of muskies. They're a little bit thicker, they're a little bit slower. They don't gravitate towards the faster water in a river system as much as they would in Wisconsin or like out your way. Um, prime example. 2 years ago, I had a client from Connecticut out in Wisconsin. It was towards the end of my guide run out there in October, and it was cold. It was cold, and the water temperature, dude, was like 43 degrees, right? 44, 43 degrees, and this dude caught a 47-inch fat Wisconsin muskie in fast water. So, I think there's just a difference. And then obviously when I was down in Kentucky and caught a handful of muskies down there, same thing, bigger, slower. They like the slower water. I'm sure they could migrate into the fast water and feed, but just different body styles that I've noticed in the different strains of muskie. Pike in New England, Pike's a pike. There's not really many different strains. They all kind of act the same. Although I have been expanding my kind of like I don't want to say research, but just trying different things where there's sections of river here that have faster water, and like targeting pike when we're going through those more than than previously, historically speaking. And then when that water temperature like gets like into the 50s, like actually starting to catch a few in some faster water. So it's just kind of like trial and error type thing. But I would say the biggest difference is the figure eight, where a pike, one, maybe two times he'll stay interested. If he doesn't decide to eat, he'll float away. Where a muskie, I've gotten muskies on, and I'm my clients, and Kate, I'll never forget the best figure eight story. I'm sure some of you guys might have heard this before, but it was Kate's birthday 2 years ago in Wisconsin. She got her first two muskies on the fly like 2 days prior. Then we got skunked the next day, and it was her birthday on a Sunday. She's like, I just want a muskie on a figure eight. And it was the third figure eight, and the muskie rolled on it each time. I actually have a photo of that fish. Rolled on it each time. And is this the fish? No, I don't have a photo of it. No, I don't have a photo. But rolled on the fly 3 times before it finally ate, and she got her birthday present, man.
Wow.
So to date came on a blind figure eight. So it was like 6:30. It was full moon. The moon was literally rising and the sun was setting. It was like, like holy shit. Like I'm waiting for like unicorns to run across the river. And figure eighting. And first figure eight. And just out of nowhere, this fish just whiffed on the fly. And this was a mistake. That's why I always tell people, like, especially in musky waters, figure eight at least twice, and don't look at the fly. Look behind your fly, look under your fly, look for any movement and anything that looks different. Because I've seen eyeballs before just float underneath my fly, where if I wasn't staring in the water during my figure eight, I wouldn't have seen that eyeball, and I would have only done one figure eight, maybe two, and pulled it out. Well, this one time, I know I'm jumping around here, but this one time I saw an eyeball, literally saw an eyeball. Like I'm like, is that an eyeball? Was that an eyeball? And I did 3 figure eights, and it was 3 or 4. The last figure eight I did, it was like a 42, 43-inch muskie just came out from underneath the boat, away from the boat, like shooting out of a rocket, and just tanked the fly. It was the easiest figure eight hook set you could ever ask for, because it was just like pull on him
Yep.
because he was
Got him.
going away from me. And it was just, yeah, it was just epic. And my buddy's like, dude, that's nuts. Like it was his first time ever trying this. And he's like, because he didn't really believe in the figure eight. He would do like a half a one, and sometimes wouldn't do one. And he's like, what happened? Like, explain that to me. I'm like, dude, I just was on my first or second figure eight or whatever, and I saw an eyeball. And it was a quick glimpse. And I'm like, and I just stuck with the figure eight. And if I had to do it 8 times, I would have done it 8 times, because that was a fish. And you could fish for 8 hours. You could fish for 3 days, and you might get one shot, right? So here's just, whether it was a muskie or a walleye, I was pretty sure it was a muskie. It was a pretty big damn eyeball, but it was just a glimpse, and it was just for a split second. And I'm like, I'm not giving up on this figure eight, because there is a fish here somewhere that's interested in my fly right now. We've been out here for 6 hours and we haven't bagged a fish or seen a fish. You bet your sweet ass I'm not going, oh, well, that's cool, and then cast again, because that fish is somewhere here. And sure enough, he came out of nowhere. But like my biggest fish personally on the figure eight, I'll get back to that story real quick. But, I did one full figure eight. And then usually what I'll do, especially in musky waters where you can't see the bottom, I'll do 2 full ones, bring the fly, this far into the surface after my second figure eight, and just twitch, and just pause for a second, and then slowly pull it out of the water, right? So for whatever reason, I was in a hurry in my mind, and this is where you got to teach yourself to slow down, is I did the figure eight, and then I pulled it out, and he came out of nowhere. Well, I just had the wherewithal, or whatever, the musky gods were watching over me that day. I instinctually, just because I had the fly about 18 inches, 20 inches off my fly tip, I just stuck the rod back in the water instantly. And that first turn, she came out and grabbed it. And it was nuts. It was nuts. And that was where my hand was bleeding and all that. So, I don't know. I'm getting a little excited about the figure eight, but you gotta figure eight.
Yeah, I'm just sitting over here like a kid in a candy shop listening to these stories, because this is like so much the why for these fish. They're just, like what is going on? It's like a fist fight in a bar with a fish, like it's not normal fishing.
Yeah, you don't like reel them in and fight. It's a wrangle job, dude. You're wrangling these fish into the net, especially any muskie or pike, but a good size one. It's like you get the hook in them, dude. That's good stuff. That's where it starts, and then you're just tangling and wrangling to get that fish in the net. You're not putting these fish on the reel.
No,
you're using your fingers a drag. You got to learn how to let them go, let them come back. Keep the rod to the side, put side pressure on him. The worst thing you want to do is go straight up in the air. His head comes to the surface and shakes out, and the fly goes, kaput. So yeah, there's a lot of little things, but and back to your original question earlier, Dan, about like the difference between pike and muskie, but to me that boils down to the same. And then also for the new guys that are just starting out in this sport, and again, being on the water X amount of days a year with people that are new to this sport, or trying to learn their second or third time, it's the figure eight, man. It's like you have to do it, and you won't understand why. You just have to have blind faith until it starts to happen. And I'll give you one last quick story. One of my favorite clients, his name is Andy. I love Andy. Andy is just a hot shit, and he could talk, and he loves to tell stories, and I'm his best audience because I just find him he's an awesome human, a good person, and he tells great stories. So, and he's a big guy, and he he's learning that casting technique and, blah, 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 with the 8 weights and 9 weights. But I told him when we first met, I'm like, Andy, listen, you don't have to cast 9,000 times today. Like, cast it out, use that figure eight. It's part of, like Bowen taught me years ago, it's part of the cast. So just figure eight, like 3 or 4 times, take a break, take a breather in between casts, right? So I literally, shit you not, probably 3 or 4 times over the last 3 years since I've known Andy, he will literally just stand there in my stealth craft, figure eight, not even looking at the fly. And so I watch it for him. And he's talking like this. He's talking to me, telling me a story. I shit you not, 3 times I go, Andy, you got a fish following your fly. And it would literally be on like the 3rd or 4th figure eight while he's talking to me, just going like this. And he had a buddy in the boat last year. And the first thing he said to his buddy is like, listen to this kid, you got to figure eight. It's just, He'll do it 5, 6 times, and the fish will just come out of nowhere because he's just taking a break. He's telling me the story. He's not worried about his next cast, because that's the thing. That's one of the biggest things that I believe in, Dan, is like the figure eight is part of the cast. You get to take a break in between just hauling and gripping it and ripping it. And more so than not, these fish come out of nowhere and will eat your fly. So it just, for anybody who's new or been around a while, it doesn't matter. Like, to me, if I had to teach 2 things the people that I meet is or fish with is, strip set, you have to learn how to do that or get in the habit of doing that the best you can, and figure eight. And there is an art to figure eighting that I don't think we have time to go into tonight, but there is an art to it, and it's not a perfect science, but it's just slowly honing that. And the only way you could slowly hone that intuition in the moment is by having enough experiences and seeing that happen.
Or being with someone like you in the boat who could tell you, do this, do that. I think maybe if only we knew somebody who could make a YouTube video on how to figure eight, maybe we could, I think that's the next one, Pogo. a lengthy diatribe on how to do it properly in all the different ways.
So on my YouTube channel, I think it's I have a short clip. It's like 3 or 4 minutes about the cast and the retrieve. It's actually, I think it's called, on my YouTube channel, just go to Pogo Pike on YouTube. I think it's called casting or retrieving, or the retrieving in the figure eight. Maybe it's not the most professionally done one, but it'll give you kind of like the insight, the way I look at it.
Yep. No, it is tough, and there are exceptions. I would say we had Weisner on earlier, and you're in crystal clear water where it's 1 foot and you can see bottom all the way around you. I'm not, probably, at least me, I'm not going to tell you to figure it 8 times, but
no, you really don't even have to figure it at those spots. I mean, it's just maybe like a J hook, just twitch your fly. If you could see everything around you, but in our environment here in the Northeast and what I've experienced out there, that's maybe 10% of the time.
Yeah, agreed. Especially, we do a lot of lake fishing. It's, we all have stories, but you have stories where you could figure eight a fish for 10 minutes and it showed up at, the 11th hour. And it's crazy. But we love it. And getting them on the 8, man, it's special.
That's when you're going to be screwed or not. As far
and just for, again, I think I see a lot of names on here of people that know what they're doing. But when we're talking figure eight, at least up here for me, we're talking with fly rods, usually big, wide, deep ovals. We're speaking the same language, right? Or are you actually doing 8s with fly rods?
I'm doing 8. Most of the time doing 8s.
Doing an actual 8. Yep.
You ever watch a seal try to get away from a shark on like one of the nature channels?
I've probably seen it. It's not ringing a bell, but
they literally, the seal does this.
Yeah.
I was watching it one day. I'm like, holy shit, the seal's doing a figure 8.
Oh my God. Interesting. So you think you're not just doing, you think there is in your mind.
Okay. So you're getting deep in the Pogo, like brain cells. That is just all philosophy, right? There's no scientific approach to any of this. I believe you have to give them a pattern to follow, right? So if your pattern is a circle, then give them a circle, but be consistent with that circle. Don't cut the corners off. I get guys that will do the fly this way and then immediately come back the other direction. I'm like, how's a fish going to do that, right? So I like the figure eight from a pattern perspective. You're showing him where this pattern is. That's what I believe.
Yep, I love it. This is awesome. Take
notes. And then also,
people.
like, you're giving him that, because most of the time I always tell people, like, you bring you're retrieving, as you're coming to the boat, you drop your fly rod. Like, let's say your fly is 10 feet off the rod tip. As it's coming in, drop your rod tip, strip, drop your rod tip. So now you got depending on the depth, but let's say you've got your rod tip 1 foot to 2 feet in the water, but now you're starting to see your fly. As it comes to the boat, dip your fly rod even a little bit further, and then in one continuous motion, go down, and then out. And when you're coming away from the boat, the fish is now looking away from us, so he's taking us out of the equation. But as the fish is coming into the boat, dig your fly a little bit deeper and then that pattern. A lot of times these fish eat on this. They come in and it's this. They don't usually eat on the straightaway. I call it that, the straightaway. It's like the straightaway, and then it's back towards the boat, and then it's a turn. So
Yep.
That's what I've noticed.
Well, and it's interesting because I used to figure 8, an actual 8 with a gear rod, and kind of move to the oval. But when you think about it and break it down, like, you're giving them more turns, right? You're giving them more change of direction, more
That's
of
right.
moments in a real 8, which could be another reason.
And I've seen a ton of YouTube videos with just circle or ovals, and that works too. And so again, this is just if somebody asked me, put a gun to my head, which is your favorite? That's my favorite.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was like, we spent a lot of time on it, but like, I think it was a representative amount of time of how important it is.
Yeah, strip set and figure 8, and don't ever take your eye off the fly.
Yeah. Dude, that
and
story,
just cast that way or that way, and that's all you need to know about pike.
That story, I don't want to go. That story of just seeing the fish's eye, though, like that
eyeball,
one,
just an eyeball.
Because like, how many people who listen to this, myself included, Jen, like you're out there, you get delirious. You're like, what was that? What was that? What was that? Oh, and it's like, I've come to believe it's probably a fish, or at least just treat it like a fish, because why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're stripping, you're like, oh, is that the bottom?
Oh.
And then they lift the fly right. No, like, strip sets are free.
Yeah.
Just jam it.
Hell yeah. All right, we got to wrap it up here because we're coming up on 8 o'clock. This has been awesome, dude. I do want to apologize to you and everybody that had to deal with the shitty connection. Hopefully you got to hear all of Pogo's good points.
Dude, if you have any more questions, feel free. I mean, I'm not in a hurry, but I know you want to wrap up for everybody else's time. But if you have one last dying thing you want to talk about, man, I'm here.
I want to do a little bit of that gear run through. We've done it on everyone. I think it's important because people, folks like you and I and everyone else who's learning, we're always learning, but I think it gives people confidence to hear, like, what's Pogo using? So start us kind of, you talk about the boat. I think folks can see your awesome fucking Stealthcraft on YouTube, but run us through the rest of it. Like, you got, one rod, your line, flies, leader. What's kind of your main thing?
So I just saw somebody pop up the leader length. So we'll start leader to line to rod, right?
Do it. Take it away.
My leader length is anywhere, just the leader, not the bite guard, because I put bite guards that stay on my flies. I use 60 to 80 pound Quattro high seas is what I use. It's the most dense, abrasion resistant 60 and 80 pound fluoro that I've found. It's called Quattro high seas. So that, that's anywhere from 8 to 10 inch bite guard, but my leader itself is right around 4 feet. So I have a butt section of 50 pound to a micro, like 80 pound barrel swivel. And then I use another 2 feet of 40 pound with a loop knot, so I can do loop to loop connection on my flies. And again, that's whoever asked that question. That's also on my YouTube channel. I go step by step on that leader system. And then lines, I've had a lot of trouble with lines when I first started out. So I gravitated to Airflow, big game depth finder.
Yep.
I use 300 grain, 400 grain, 500 grain. I even have 700 grain for a 12 weight that I have that I don't recommend. You could take your head off. But every once in a while I'll double hand it and chuck it like a baseball bat. So those are the lines that I use. I think they're the most durable. They cast really well. They can get really deep if you need them deep. Because I think they have braid, so they don't stretch. You don't get a lot of cracks. I had some problems with other manufacturers that the line cracks like crazy.
Well, and one of the strongest cores, they are a core, and they're not your 30-pound core like your average fly line. 50.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then for rods, man, like the only.
Can I ask a question, Pogo, before you go rods?
Yeah.
Are you? And maybe this is fishery specific, but like, hey, was that a puppy or a cat? Hey,
what's Sophia?
We got a little girl over here too. I noticed you didn't talk about intermediate lines. Is that intentional?
Yeah. So that's a great question. There's not a lot of opportunities here to use intermediate lines in the Northeast versus like what I've seen out there. So intermediate, like out your way, absolutely. Okay. Up here, not as necessary.
Just deeper water.
Yeah, it's just deeper, slower water. Yep. But
older water.
I love intermediate line. I love fishing Wisconsin with intermediate line. It's but not a lot of that.
Makes sense.
Yep. And then the rods,
Go for it.
yeah, then the rods, obviously, when I first started, it was a 10 weight, 11 weight, biggest fly possible. Not necessary. It's fun. I enjoy it. I advocate it. But if you want to start with an 8 weight and a 6 to 8 inch fly, it works. Kate, 2 years ago, throwing 8 weights with pike sized flies, catching 42 inch muskies, right? So, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The only thing I find myself recommending to newbies is don't go spend $800 on, and I love Sage rods. And so please, Sage, if you're listening to this, which I know you're not, but like all you do is going to break the rod tip because they're not made for that fly line. It's not made for knots coming through your rod tip. So don't go out and I got the latest Sage method. Sophia wants to make a guest appearance. You could use a TFO. I use Tommy Shank Musky Chippewa River rods. Dave Huff has a great set of rods. So, you could get really good rods at an affordable price that are kind of made for this sport specifically. And that's why I love Chippewa River, because they're one piece, a big believer in the one piece now. And then they suck to travel with in your car, but hey, get over it, right? So, and then, as far as a reel, dude, you could get a piece of cardboard. You could throw the line around a piece of cardboard, duct tape it to the bottom of your rod, and fish. You could use literally you could take a coffee cup and wrap your line around.
I'm still waiting for someone to just take it out of the box and redo it on the spool that it comes on, and just do exactly what you're talking about. Just rig it up on the
rack. Yeah. I really want to fish with I'm going to try it this fall. I'm going to fish with no reel. You can throw the line on the ground and fish on the boat and fish. Because you're never going to get these fish on the reel.
I will await the 10 Cara Musky Pogo video then, because that's what you can make no reel. I mean, I know it's not real 10 Cara fishing, but
yeah. But I just want to say this to anybody who's listening, if you record this, right, I guess. So if anybody watches this, the other thing too is the whole combination that it's kind of finding that secret recipe. You want to match, and I have this in my YouTube video on rods and lines and all that, my little video on that, but you want to line up the size of the fly with the size of the rod, right? It's that simple. So, and again, bigger is not always better. Yes, it's fun to throw a 12 weight or 10 weight or 11 or 12 weight with monster flies, and I do it all the time. It's a 15-minute session, then it's back to a 10 weight or back to an 8 weight. But like I said, just getting people that into the sport with muskie, more specifically, because people think you need to go bigger, and it's fun, and you could, and you do, and it's awesome. But if you're just starting out, an 8 or 9 weight, it will do the trick all day long, and you don't need a monster fly. Although once you graduate to the monster flies, then it's just it's like having a couple of drivers in your golf bag. Let me try this one because this is the environment that I'm fishing, or I'm kind of bored with this one. Let me throw the 12 weight for fun because we're going down river. Is a bigger section, deeper holes. I want to get down deeper, and I want to chuck some real meat because for whatever reason, I think that this might work in this particular section. So you don't have to kill yourself.
Well, and I make the comparison to many people. My dad loves to fish muskie with a MEPS 5 muskie killer. It's big. He throws a really tiny rod. My uncle loves to throw a Magnum Bulldog. Different. Yeah. That lure brings him confidence. That other lure brings my dad confidence.
That's it.
If you're confident with an 8 weight and a 6 inch, 5 inch fly, or you're confident with a 15 inch, do what you got to do.
Yeah, so Jeff on here just said, "Hey, thanks for the shout out about the not having to go so big." And hey, Jeff, how you doing? I know Jeff from social media. But yeah, so I was guiding 3 seasons ago, and my friend Tallis made me a bunch of river pigs, smallmouth would chomp on them, and we started catching pike after pike on them, and I'm like, holy shit, this is cool because they're that big. They got the lead eyes, so it's for a beginner, it's a little easier to punch out there. It gets down faster, so you don't, they don't have to be as patient. And we're catching 36, 38 inch pike on river pigs this big, But that's the thing, you said it right, is confidence. So with the fly that you're throwing, and this will I'll wrap up my thought process, is just same thing with the flies. If you have like super uber duper confidence in pink and white, then throw that as much as you can, and then experiment with different colors if the bite's not happening. But the fly's got to entertain you more than the fish, because it's going to keep your interest.
Yep. And we did get one kind of I wanted to hit on. I totally agree with that. I'm going to ask you a follow-up on flies, but I want to get to Mike's question. Mike, how's it going, buddy? He just got his first muskie setup, so he's super jacked.
Nice.
Leader, talk to him a little bit about how close you like to, how much basically leader or bite guard is outside of the tip of your rod and your fly when you're doing a figure eight.
Great question. Great question. So because the reason why it's a great question, because the longer that your fly is off your rod tip, the less you're going to be able to control that figure eight, and the less of aggressive set you're going to get if he eats. So my leader is about, like I said, about 4 feet to where 3.5 to 4 feet to where the bite guard starts, right? So I tell my clients, when you're stripping in, you'll hear the nail knot tink come through into the rod tip. Then you're going to go boom, and you're going to hear the barrel swivel, which is the halfway point. And some people might not have barrel swivels. You might just have a knot to knot connection. And then it's like a dink. And then you go into the figure eight. You'll hear dink, dink, and then you're the figure eight. So if my leader, do I have one here? I should have had one here. But
you're talking like a foot, maybe.
So yeah. So I always tell my clients, don't bring the bite guard into the rod tip, because then it won't pull out as easy if a fish eats, and then you gotta, at the end of the cast, you gotta pull it out by hand. So just at the end of, like, maybe give it like 3 or 4 inches off your bite guard. So if your bite guard's 8 to 10 inches, maybe another 3 or 4 inches. So you might have 14 to 16 inches off the rod tip.
Yep.
And people are always like amazed. They're like, when they first start doing, like, that's not going to scare the fish. I'm like, no, it's not.
Not these ones.
Yeah. So
you made
closer to the bite guard as possible, as long as your bite guard's at least 8 to 10 inches.
Yeah, you made a good point too. Like, go out there and try and figure eight consistently at a high speed with 2.5, 3 feet. You just can't do it.
No, you can't control the fly.
Elastico arms, and it's kind of that sweet spot between not too short, like you're saying. Don't strip all your bite guard in.
None of your bite guard. Keep
none
the
of your
whole
bite
guard
right?
outside. Yeah.
None of your bite guard, but right up to it. And I run like 12 to 15 inches of wire, so it's the same thing. I basically have the wire and a little bit of the knot, but it's more about the ability to figure eight. And this comes again, my experience fishing with gear rods. Like, gear rods are just so fun to figure eight because you can just reef on them and you gotta be cognizant with a fly rod of, like, making sure we're set up for a successful eight, like you've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Because that you just nailed it all. I think we covered that really well. That's the stuff that you play with as you're out there, and then depth of the figure eight and knowing when to go deep and not. But yep.
Deep at the boat would be
yeah. When you're coming into the boat deep, when you're away from the boat, you can bring it up towards the surface a little bit, because you want to take yourself and the boat out of the equation when you're bringing it in.
Yep. Okay. I know I'm over. I'm going to take you on. You're a little bit over. And thanks to the people that are sticking around. You'll get the juicy secret spots from Pogo now. No, I'm kidding. Just round us out before we do a little bit of the actual conclusion. Fly talk. Really, brief, keep it high level, but, like, you get a couple flies for the whole season. What are you using? How much does it matter to you? Color, size, profile. And what would you pick? I think it's kind of an interesting hypothetical question.
What would I pick?
You're coming on my boat for a whole season. I say you get to pick 2 flies. You can't have any more. What are you picking? And would you be
all right? So the 2 flies would be a natural color and then a pink and white one. So natural color could be like a tan and brown, something natural. And then white and pink, that is like one of my favorite go-tos. And then one would be articulated and one would be like a single hook, kind of like maybe bigger style river pig.
Yeah.
I love articulated flies just because when you strip and they kick and pause and they kick out and the tail does all that fun stuff. Those would be my 2 go-to flies. If I had 2 flies for the season, would be one single hook, like bigger style river pig, or even medium-sized river pig for muskies, but and then an articulated white and pink fly are my 2 favorite.
Talk to us a little bit about, like, why you like the river pig, and I promise this will be it. Just because
Yeah, no.
It's like Bufords and Yardtails, and they're all these awesome flies. But river
Yeah.
pig is kind of that ugly stepchild that needs to get a little bit more attention because it's
Yeah.
time and place.
Yeah. Yeah. And when Brad started putting those out, like it was pretty cool because I like, and again, this is for all different river conditions, but like when you're fishing slower, deeper water, for example, or you're even if you're switching a fly, if you're in like if you're on the Flambeau River in Wisconsin and like it's gradient, and then you get into a deeper pool that might be 50 yards long, throw on a river pig, right? Because I think what it does is just that down motion and up motion, that down motion and up motion. You know, that fish might be sitting on a log in 8 feet of water and you're stripping your articulated fly or a Buford and it's 3-4 feet under the water and they're like, well, I can't really see that. What was that? I'm not that interested. But you get a river pig that gets down another 2 feet, for example, and just gets their attention. I like it. I like the fact that you're combining the depth of your fly line with a little bit of a weighted fly to kind of maybe that extra foot. And again, this is just my imagination, but I've seen it work. Is just getting that fly down an extra couple feet in that particular moment where you're like, oh shit, that's a fish.
Yep, I love it. And I do this a lot. You'll get to know it as you get to know me more. But like I always make comparisons to gear because there's just a lot more of them. They're more successful because there's more of them, and we can learn. And it's like there are guys I know that fish bulldogs and heavy plastics all year long, and the closest I've seen is river pig style flies, whether it's lakes or rivers.
Yeah.
Getting it down deep, being able to kind of cleanly get it down deep because the hook's pointed up. I love it.
And that's why, like, I think with the beautiful thing about like fly fishing versus even gear fishing for that matter, like fly fishing, you can control the depth. So knowing your depth as you're going down river or in a lake, right, that helps, right? So if you know the depth or kind of the depth, you can control your approach and your presentation based upon how deep you keep your rod tip in the water after the fly lands, the speed of your retrieve, the size of bucktail on your fly or weight on your fly. So you're what I always try to teach and I always try to learn every day, and I've ingrained this in myself over the years is as you know that depth, you gotta it sounds really fucking zen, but be the fish. Where are the fish, right? So how am I imagining my fly in this particular section as I'm casting, and where do I want that fly to get to? Do I need to drop my rod tip further down? Do I need a little bit slower of a retrieve? Because I do believe you have to use your imagination when you're casting all effing day. And like, as you, and if you, with a guide, he'll tell you, okay, it's this deep, this is where we're at. Or if not, you got to play with that depth and play with that presentation. And just imagine what that fly is doing based upon the depth, the time of the year, and all that fun stuff.
Yep. Especially like
the time of the year is important too.
You're gonna hit that point 4 hours in where you just start dragging the fly back to the boat, and just like it's a good reminder to just hear Pogo telling you to figure 8 and imagine, be the fish. And
and where what that fly is doing under the surface, and like where and that takes experience. That just takes enough fish eating, catching fish, missing fish, seeing fish. It just comes as you get more experiences.
Yep. Well, and I've picked up on it. I'm nowhere near, not even in the conversation about like good anglers, but the ones I've fished with that I notice, I love to fish with you because I'm sure you share it.
Yeah.
It's like focus at the end of the day. Focus seems to be the thing. They're just, whether their eye is off the ball or not, like they're focused on what their fly is doing, where their slack is, what it's doing in the water, and they're just kind of ready to go. So
because it literally happens. A lot of times it does happen the bottom of the ninth.
Yep.
I've seen it. 4-day trips out in Wisconsin, 4 days, the last 20 minutes. You could see the classic BS story that just should be like, oh, you just made that. Like you could see the boat landing and the dude's been casting for 3.5 days, has duct tape on his wrist and his elbow. And is fighting a 40-something inch muskie going, if you don't net this thing right now, I'm going to let go of this rod because I can't feel my arm anymore. and netting the fish and then taking a photo. And he goes, my wife is going to actually believe I went to Wisconsin fishing now.
Oh my God.
Like duct tape, Dan, duct tape for the 4th day. Couldn't cast anymore. like fly fish 10 times in his life, but he's a tough kid. Just like, I'm gonna do it.
I love it, man. Just
to this day, he can't work his wrist properly. 6 years later.
Just pure grit, though. I love it. I love it.
The boat landing is in sight. Like 3.5 days.
It's like, again, I said it like I sound like a broken record, but those are the stories that just I love. It makes me love it even more because it's so true, and you do put a little bit of your, you leave it out there. We take it more serious than we probably should, but when you're out there, leave it out there. And, something might happen. That guy needs like a medal,
He does, man. He still hasn't fly fished.
He can't use his wrist anymore, so he's got a story.
6 years, like won't. He's like, I'm done. He's like, I need surgery. He's like, I need surgery. He's like, but it was worth it.
It was. All right, dude. Well, I gotta wrap it up. We are gonna.
Good talk.
Did we get another question? Is that? Oh, I did, Brian. I think we hit your question when we talked about Connecticut, Wisconsin, Pike, Muskie. If we didn't, let us know. We'll touch on it a little bit more, but we are over. I don't like to go too far over because people will start dropping and have to get to dinner and tying flies and all that shit. But Pogo, dude, thank you so much. Genuinely, this was awesome. For everybody that's with us now and listens later, go check out Pogo on YouTube. Like, literally, I've watched all the videos. They continue to be informative even after doing it for a while. If you're wondering how to do something, he's probably got a video about it. And if you want to, take it to the next level, give the guy a call and go book a trip with him. Again, really appreciate it. We will include a lot of the stuff we talked about. I took notes, your leader building video, your figure eighting video. We're going to include that when we post this. So
cool.
You can.
And I want to say to the audience, everybody who's still on, like, your best bet to reach out to me would be like Instagram, just Pogo Pike. And I mean, like, if you want to like send me a message, just saying, hey, Pogo, you talked about this. I have a few questions, or anybody wants to just shoot the shit about Muskie or Pike. I'm not that guy. Like, I don't know this guy. Like, I have fucking sometimes a half-hour text message conversation with people to try to give them some words of wisdom, or they're asking questions. So anybody feel free to reach out anytime.
That's awesome. And I definitely encourage you to do it. He's a fun dude to talk to, and hopefully we get to fish together soon, brother.
Yes, you're going to be out here, and I'm going to be out there, so we're going to make it happen.
Beautiful. All right, dude. You have a wonderful night. Again, appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Dan. I'll talk to you guys soon.
See ya. Thanks, everybody else. Have a good night.
You too.